conference organizers for allowing me to come and present a little bit of information on the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance to you. Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance exists to power the movement to get kids moving. So we're an evidence-based organization, not a programmatic-based organization. So connecting research with action to get more children active. I'm an academic, that'll be obvious through the presentation. I'm here to provide evidence and ideas, not selling anything, but certainly not selling myself. The presentation overview, I'll talk briefly about the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance report cards, the Global Matrix 3 process. You'll understand what Global Matrix means by the end. The Global Matrix 3 key findings and future opportunities to collaborate and connect, probably within your own country that you don't even know about. So first, talking about report cards, it's one of the major initiatives of the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance. This is predicated on the fact that approximately 80% of children worldwide are insufficiently active. We've heard that many times here. But what we haven't heard a lot is that international comparisons can provide key strategic insights that we haven't exploited really, and the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance tries to do that. The report card assigns letter grades to different indicators that are grouped within categories. Okay, so just like your kid comes home with their report card from school, they have a math, a science, a language arts grade, and so on, we do the same sort of thing at a country level related to physical activity. The grades are based on a synthesis and examination of the current evidence within a country against a standardized benchmark. The assessment of trends over time and the presence of disparities is considered in the grading. And together the indicators provide a robust and comprehensive assessment of the physical activity of children and youth. So how is your country doing? And how is your country doing in comparison to other countries? Each country, after they've registered and begin this process, they establish a report card leadership committee with guidance from our group. It needs to be national in scope. It needs to have cross-sectoral representation, means it needs to have representation from the physical activity sector, active transportation, active play, organized sport, school, community, built environment, and so on. It needs to be unbiased, transparent, participatory, consensus-driven, and needs to follow the process that we prescribe through the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance. The most recent report card process has had 10 subjects or indicators. 5 behavioral indicators, as I mentioned: overall physical activity, organized sport, active play, active transportation, and sedentary behavior. 1 characteristic, physical fitness, and 4 measures of the settings and sources of influence of those variables. So family and peers, school, community in the built environment, and the government. And we follow a grading framework and I know this doesn't work in all countries, but it's pretty simple to follow. We go from letters A to F. A plus is the best you can do, almost 100%. F is a failing grade. And you see you can read there, I won't go through it for you, what each means. So basically the higher the grade, the better you're doing with respect to that indicator, supporting physical activity for children and youth in your country. The report card itself tends to be produced in 2 forms, a long form and a short form. The short form is a very public-facing, pamphlet-like summary of things, good for discussion around the family dinner table. The long form has all of the research evidence that substantiates the grades that are in the short form report card. So why did you grade family and peers as C in Slovakia? Well, you go and you would look at the long form report card, it would tell you the evidence upon which that grade was based. They tend to be produced in print copy, so you can carry them around, as well as electronic, and I'll show you where you can get those. Multiple languages for some countries. Canada, for instance, we have to produce everything in English and in French. And they're typically housed on a country-specific website. So Active Healthy Kids Zimbabwe. If you Google that now, you can go and you can see the Active Healthy Kids Zimbabwe report card. The reason we do this is multiple. It serves as a public awareness mechanism and a call to action through a nationwide media advocacy strategy. I'll talk a little bit more about that. It's an accountability index for all citizens in the country. You say you're doing a wonderful job, let's see the best available evidence and see if that substantiates what you're saying. It's a surveillance synthesis mechanism because we pull all of the evidence together. Not just what comes from Sport Australia and PE Australia or whatever, but all of the evidence there. Put it together, you get a group of experts to distill it, and that's what you base the grades on. It's an advocacy tool for physical activity leaders and organizations, particularly relevant for this group, perhaps a process to identify strategic priorities for interventions. So this process has been done for many of your countries. It's a policy driver with tremendous success around the world already. It's a process for identifying research and surveillance needs, and it's a challenge to other jurisdictions to come on board. So if your country isn't involved and you want to get involved, just go to the Active Healthy Kids Canada, Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance website and register. So we've been doing this for a while. In Canada, we've been doing the report card since 2005. It's had tremendous impact on our policy, our practice, our programs, and our research in Canada. So we were doing it from 2005 to 2014, our 10th anniversary report card. Many countries, many researchers from countries were contacting me and saying, well, how do you do it? Could we do it in our country? And frankly, it became a bit annoying. It was taking a lot of time, a lot of energy. And so I coordinated 15 countries to do it together, following the same process so that we could compare between countries, for release at a global summit on physical activity for children that was held in Toronto in 2014. So that was the Global Matrix 1, and this is the manuscript that has all that information in it. By the way, all the manuscripts that you're going to see referred to here are open access. We paid for open access. We work a lot with countries in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, where they don't have access to the journals that you probably have access to. So we make them all open access, so easy to go and get this information. 2 years later, and that was with 15 countries, 2 years later with 38 countries, we released the Global Matrix 2 in Bangkok, Thailand. And 2 years after that, so about 11 months ago, in Adelaide, Australia, we released the Global Matrix 3 with 49 countries participating. You can see the list of authors there. A few of the co-authors are probably in the audience from certain countries. Again, open access, you can go and get. These are fairly thick papers with tons of information embedded in them. The Global Matrix 3, the most recent one, involved 513 leaders from those 49 countries. You can see the network map here. Just 3 weeks ago, we published an impact paper. We're always asked from people, so what? So we do these things, it's just another thing that sits on the shelf and collects dust. I would beg to differ. And we published a paper in 2014 on the first 10 years of the Canadian report card, giving many, many examples on how the report card itself and the process influenced the media, influenced the government, influenced the practice and programs that exist in Canada. We've done it most recently now internationally. So again, open access, I encourage you to go and look at this paper. If you want to try and make a case in your country to do this, go and look. Look how it impacted Denmark, how it impacted Chile, how it impacted Brazil, China, Thailand, etc. Just to give you an example within Canada, so these are the 13 report cards that have been released so far. The media impact has been extraordinary. When we release a report card, it's the top news story in Canada. You can see the red line there are the media hits. A hit means a particular media interview or a newspaper covering it, radio station and so on. You'll see at times we get over 1,000 media hits. The bars represent media impressions, which is a media hit times the reach of that media outlet. So a national newspaper has a greater reach than a local newspaper. And you can see at times we're above 250 million media impressions with our release. This is from a country that has 35 million people. Okay, so you can scale that up or down for your own country. Tremendous impact. Not that being in the news is the important thing, but it gets people talking about it, including politicians and people when politicians come to their doors talking about this issue. So in case it's still been really vague what the Global Matrix is, this, which you can't read, is at least a portion of the Global Matrix. So what you have are the indicators, the 10 indicators that I summarized for you across the top, including an average on the far right. And then a list of the countries. This is in 49 because I can't fit them there because it's alphabetical down to South Africa. And what you see is a matrix. You've got the grades, you've got the countries. And even though I know you can't read it, you can see that every column and every row isn't the same, which means there's variability, which means there's information contained in here. okay? And when there's information contained in there, then we can compare and contrast. Well, who did really well in active transportation and who did really poorly? And can the people that did really poorly learn from those that did really well? And we can cross-fertilize. It's exactly what the global matrix does. Many examples of that in the papers that I showed you. So I'm going to go through 2 of the 10, sort of systematically, to just give you an idea about the information we can draw, just snippets of information that we can draw. So for each of them, there's a benchmark. In this case, it's the percent of children and youth who meet the physical activity guidelines, which we've heard from several speakers. We have data from almost 1.4 million kids in this particular analysis from the 49 countries. The global average was a D. So a D means that I think 26 to 33% are meeting the guidelines. A quarter to a third, not very flattering. HDI stands for Human Development Index. This is how we compare across country development. So a sub-Saharan African country that participated, like Mozambique, for example, low-income country. Middle-income country like China. High-income country like some of the poorer countries in Europe, and then a very high-income country like Canada, for example. And you can see some variability, that the low and medium-income countries are doing better than the higher-income countries. Better, okay? There's going to be a bit of a theme showing here that we often tend to disregard. Slovenia, which is not a low-income country, but still reported the highest grades. 6 countries reported F grades. All the full details are available on the website and in the papers. I don't have time to go through that. There were only 2 countries of the 49 that participated that did not have enough information that they felt they could grade the report card. So they assigned incomplete grades, which means it's a call to action for their jurisdiction to collect that information. And the grades were generally higher in low and medium in HDI countries and had a significant negative correlation between HDI and the overall physical activity grades. So in other words, as a country's development goes up, the physical activity levels go down. Okay? Organized sport and physical activity, the only other one that I'll cover in this way. The benchmark is the percent of children and youth who participate in organized sport and or physical activity programs, organized physical activity programs, swimming lessons, for example. Global average is a C, so a full grade higher than the overall physical activity. Globally, we do better in sport than we do in physical activity. Pretty consistent with the message of the previous speaker. The HDI variation, you'll see a bit of a different pattern here. So low and medium income countries not doing as well as very high income countries. Even within countries, people from low socioeconomic status not doing as well as those from high socioeconomic status. Denmark had the highest grade, and 12 countries had grades of B. So overall, you can see the whole distribution here is different towards better grades. 7 countries reported incomplete grades. 12 of the 13 top grades for this were from very high HDI countries. So in other words, if your country has money, it has a good sport system and good sport opportunities for kids. If it doesn't, it doesn't. There's a significant positive correlation, positive, not negative like the last one, between the grade and HDI, as well as countries' expenditures for public health. So again, it's just a sign of wealth within the country. Now, if I put all of the 10 grades together into 2 buckets, the behavioral ones, there are 5 behaviors, okay, and then the settings and source of influence, which will be the next slide. You can see the majority of children and youth are not meeting the physical activity guidelines. That's old news. The low overall physical activity grade for high-income countries is certainly influenced by automation and convenience, our modern lifestyle. And you can see as you go down the cascade of HDI, the grades go up. We're always feeling sorry for the poorer countries, but from a physical activity perspective, we should be idolizing them, we should be watching them, monitoring them, and learning from them. It's the case with active transport or overall physical activity. It's also the same for active play. The sources of influence, so family and peers, schools, community, the environment, these sorts of things. It's a different story. You see the exact opposite cascade. So the grades are good. We have good support structures in high-income countries. Low-income countries don't. So we have good support structures, and the very things we're trying to support, we have very bad grades. They have poor support structures, and the very thing that we're concerned about, they do quite well in. It's natural, it's normal, it's habitual, it's a default thing, it's not fabricated. 4 quick messages here. For the first time, report cards on physical activity for children and youth were developed in 49 countries across 6 continents. These results from the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance show us that there's much we can learn from each other, and we should be learning from each other. The majority of children and youth are not active enough, spend too much time in front of screens, and have a low level of physical fitness. That's the best available evidence in the world. Different patterns were observed across HDI categories. Countries succeeding overall, like Slovenia, Zimbabwe, and Japan, rely on very different approaches to get kids moving. What is consistent, however, is that among them, the physical activity is driven by a pervasive cultural norm. Being active is not just a choice, but it's rather a way of life. It's not something that's orchestrated, happens only on Tuesdays in June or something like that. We need to make the active choice normal and habitual. Simple but challenging. Urbanization, mechanization, increased use of motorized transport, and excessive recreational screen time have changed physical activity levels globally on a fundamental level, and continuing to on a fundamental level. Pushing back against these trends requires changes to social and built environments. It'll take many sectors of society working together to shift the behaviors to get our children and youth more physically active, but their health depends on it, as we've heard from many presentations. So last couple slides here. When we do the report card process, and in addition to auditing and helping countries assign their grades, we challenge them with coming up with recommendations to improve the grade. It's not just to say, oh, we're all failing in this or we're doing well in that. It's like, how can we improve the grade? How can we do better? And then we get those 49 lists of recommendations, and we're able to consolidate those into some global patterns. That's what I'll show on this slide. So first, to create a global movement for comprehensive school physical activity programs that support and allow all children, okay, and that means the poor, that means the disabled, that means, the marginalized, to meet the physical activity guidelines through a variety of strategies and interventions. So that can include active recess, physical activity breaks, compulsory physical education that actually gets implemented, and so on. Create a global culture of active kids, active people in all settings, prioritizing active transportation above other modes of transportation, directly linked with the systems approach from the Global Action Plan for Physical Activity that Fiona presented yesterday. Invest in comprehensive social interventions to research and improve implementation and uptake strategies to manage recreational screen time. This is the countercurrent to our efforts, and it's a very powerful countercurrent. To develop standardized global surveillance system, which we don't have. This is a big problem, very difficult to overcome as well. No one wants to fund developing surveillance systems. And finally, we need to evaluate whether or not the things that we're doing are actually getting implemented, the fidelity of the implementation. Many good policies in countries I've seen dispensed of because they didn't show change over time. But if you go and dig into it, they didn't show change over time because they never happened. It's not that they were a bad idea. This is our website, www.activehealthykids.org. You can go there and find out information on any country. So you can go to the Global Matrix, click on your country, Japan, and it'll take you to Japan. If Japan participated in Global Matrix 1, 2, and 3, all 3 of their results will be in there. Their report card, short form, long form, who developed it, what the grades were, what the recommendations for improvements are, and so forth. Every country is in there. So in summary, the Global Matrix 3 provides a comprehensive summary of physical activity behavior and sources of influence from 49 countries. The average grades for physical activity, for sedentary behavior, and for fitness are low. That's sad, a sad legacy that we're passing on to our younger generation. The results suggest a complex network of strengths and limitations across countries, with some global patterns emerging when you compare by HDI, but also when you compare by inequality, whether Gini index or gender inequality index. In general, if inequality goes up, the grades come down. So it's linked to a lot of very important things around the world. We need to make the active choice normal, habitual, routine, value, not orchestrated, fabricated, or synthetic. Global Matrix 4 planning is underway. If people want to know more, please approach me. And the real message I want to get across, and there'll still be a couple minutes, is that many of you, I doubt, are aware of this. And odds are in your country, has a report card. And if you go to our website and pick your country and go into it, there are already recommendations for improvement based on the best available evidence within your country. And so if you're involved in an NGO, go and look at that and latch on to that. Contact the people that are involved in your country. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark. Since I'm in the position of organized sport, the overall grades were 1 grade better than the overall physical activity. It's rather a competitive sport. So the dimension organized sport is rather a competitive approach, or rather a grassroots approach.
Yeah, it doesn't. We don't differentiate in most countries when they do have sports surveys. Don't ask kind of that delineation. It's just that their kids are participating in some structured sport or physical activity. You know, so it could be dance, it could be something, but it's not free play as we heard in the previous presentation.
Because to me, instantly the grassroots sport as a movement came to my mind, because that's which should put the focus on participation rather than performance, right, and effort. So
I completely agree, but I would say in the very high-income countries in the world, we're doing that, we're doing it pretty well. The people we're missing are the marginalized or those with certain challenges.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. We have some time for other questions. If you would like to ask something from Mark, Paul.
Thank you, Mark, for your presentation of the global matrix. I think it's very interesting information that you can deliver. And I have one question particularly related to the school setting, because I'm the president of the European Physical Education Teacher Association, so the school setting is what interests us most. So having now a look at grades of the different countries, what would now mean grades in the school category for the school setting? Like, for example, if there is a B for a country, what does this mean?
Yeah, good question. And the same sort of for all of those settings and sources of influence. You can ask the same question about a family or a built environment and so on. And unlike the behaviors, which are rather simple and discrete, the settings and sources of influence are not. They're complicated and there's lots. So there are many benchmarks. So I would encourage you to go and look at the papers to see all the different things that could be part of that. And this is also part of the problem. Some countries will have information on how many minutes of phys ed kids get in their school, or if there's a policy on comprehensive school health, or if they have after-school programs, or if they have an active transportation program to and from schools, if they have bike racks at the schools, if the kids are allowed to rollerblade to school, all kinds of different things like that. So they all feed in, and then the expert committee within the country will decide, based on the benchmarks, what the grade should be. And so, off the top of my head, the school grades, I don't know if anyone got an A, but there was, I think, B pluses and right down to F. So again, good variability, and those that are doing very poorly, it's an implementation issue. In many countries in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, physical education is scheduled in the curriculum, but it's not provided, because all the focus is, you see the head shaking, it's on getting good math grades, and somehow teachers should be trained otherwise, think that the only way to do well on math or any other subject is by spending more time drilling that in. And of course at the expense of physical activity, and those that are familiar with the literature know it's just the opposite. If you let kids move, they're going to retain the stuff way better.
Thank you very much. Thank you.